The great chamber of Apex Prime Station floated in the darkness of space like a jewel made of light and metal. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated places. Their forms were strange and beautiful, ranging from the tall, thin Vryn with their silver skin to the floating gas beings of the collective. All of them watched the lone human standing in the center of the room. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood straight and calm, though her heart was beating fast. She wore the simple blue uniform of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. Her hands were folded behind her back. Around her, thousands of alien eyes stared with something that looked like fear. High Arbiter Zelkon of the Vryn Consensus spoke first. His voice was cold and formal. The Council has reviewed Earth's petition for membership. We have studied your world, your biology, your history. What we have discovered troubles us greatly. A hologram appeared above Sarah's head. It showed Earth spinning slowly, its blue oceans and green continents visible. Then numbers and symbols in dozens of alien languages appeared around it. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, Zelkon continued. This is the highest danger rating we have ever recorded. Your planet should not support intelligent life, yet somehow humans not only survived but thrived there. Another alien stood. This one was short and covered in soft purple fur. Your gravity is crushing. Your temperature swings are extreme. Your world has massive predators, violent weather, and diseases that would kill most species in the galaxy. How did you survive? Sarah spoke clearly. We adapted. We evolved. We learned to work together. That is what frightens us, said a third alien, its voice bubbling through a translation device. You are persistence hunters. You chase prey until it dies of exhaustion. You eat both plants and meat. You form emotional bonds with predatory animals. You have forward-facing eyes like a hunter. Your bodies heal from wounds that would be fatal to us. Dr. Marcus Webb, who stood behind Sarah with the human delegation, stepped forward. Council members, please understand. Yes, Earth is harsh, but that harshness taught us compassion, not cruelty. We learned to help each other because alone we would die. We learned to be creative, to solve problems, to never give up. These are gifts, not threats. Zelkon's eyes narrowed. You wage war on each other constantly. Your history is filled with violence. Just 100 years ago, you fought with nuclear weapons. You nearly destroyed yourselves. And we stopped, Sarah said firmly. We learned, we united. We chose peace over destruction. Doesn't that count for something? The chamber fell silent. Then the voting began. One by one, species after species voted against humanity's membership. The final count was crushing. 43 voted no, only 4 voted yes. Zelkon stood tall. The Council has decided. Humanity is too dangerous to join civilized space. We hereby impose a quarantine on the Sol system. No human ships may travel beyond your home sector. This is for the safety of all species. Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. You fear what you don't understand. We came seeking friendship, not conquest. We wanted to share our knowledge, our art, our dreams. We wanted to learn from you, but you only see monsters when you look at us. We see sleeping predators, Zelkon replied. And we choose caution over risk. The human delegation left the chamber in silence. Behind them, they could hear the aliens breathing sighs of relief as if a great danger had passed. Sarah's hands were shaking now, but she kept walking until they reached their ship. On the journey back to Earth, Sarah sat in her quarters and stared out at the stars. Dr. Webb came to sit beside her. We knew this might happen, he said softly. Knowing doesn't make it hurt less, Sarah replied. We're alone, Marcus. Alone in a galaxy full of civilizations that think we're monsters. Then we'll prove them wrong. We'll build our own future. We'll show them what humanity really is. Sarah nodded slowly. I suppose we have no choice. But neither of them knew that far away in the deepest darkness between the stars, something was stirring. Something old and hungry. Something that would make the galaxy regret its choice. 3 months later, Earth's deep space monitoring stations picked up strange signals from beyond the galaxy's edge. The patterns were unlike anything humans had ever seen. The scientists who studied them felt a cold fear they couldn't explain. They sent their reports to Earth's new Space Defense Command, a military organization that had been formed after the Council's rejection. Admiral James Coltrane read the reports with growing concern. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from Earth's old wars. He had seen combat before. He knew what danger looked like, and this looked like danger. Send probes, he ordered. I want to know what's out there. But by the time the probes reached the source of the signals, there was nothing left. An entire star system had gone silent, 6 billion alien lives gone without a trace. The probes sent back only one image before they too went dark, a vast shadow moving between the stars, blotting out the light. On Apex Prime, the Council remained unaware. They celebrated their wisdom in keeping the dangerous humans contained. They believed they had protected the galaxy. They had no idea that something far worse than humans was about to arrive, something that would make them wish they had accepted Earth's friendship when they had the chance. The countdown to extinction had begun, and only the species they feared most could save them now. 6 months had passed since humanity's rejection from the Galactic Council. On Earth, humans built their ships and expanded their colonies in silence. They asked nothing from the galaxy that had turned them away. But they watched. They always watched. The first sign of trouble came from the edge of known space. The Lytheran commune was a peaceful species of gentle beings who had never known war. Their colonies dotted the outer rim of the galaxy, farming and studying the stars. Then, without warning, Colony 7 stopped transmitting. Then Colony 9. Then Colony 12. At first, the Lithurians thought it was equipment failure. They sent repair ships. Those ships never returned. They sent more ships with military escorts. Those disappeared too. Within 3 weeks, 17 colonies had gone completely silent. The Council finally took notice. High Arbiter Zelkon called an emergency session. The chamber that had once judged humanity now filled with frightened voices. Holographic displays showed the missing colonies, one by one winking out like stars dying in the night. "We must investigate," said one council member. "We must know what is happening." "Send the fleet," ordered Zelkon. "But proceed with caution." The Vryn fleet was the pride of the galaxy. 200 ships, each one a masterpiece of technology and design. They had polished hulls and powerful energy weapons. They had never lost a battle. Their commanders were confident as they jumped into hyperspace toward the last known position of the Lytheran colonies. What they found was horror beyond imagination. The colonies were still there, but they were changed. Massive organic structures covered the buildings, pulsing with dark energy. The ships moved closer to investigate. That was their fatal mistake. The structures opened, and from them poured thousands of creatures made of living darkness. They moved through space without ships, propelling themselves with bursts of energy. They swarmed the Vryn fleet like insects attacking a giant. The Vryn weapons fired, and many creatures died. But for every one destroyed, 10 more emerged. The creatures touched the ships and began to change them. Metal turned to organic material. Computer systems became infected with something that was alive. The fleet tried to retreat, but the creatures were too fast. In 14 minutes, 200 proud ships became 200 tombs. Only one escape pod made it away. Inside was a young Vryn officer named Kesith. He had watched his entire fleet die around him. His hands were still shaking as he transmitted his report back to the council. "They're not like anything we've ever seen." His voice crackled through the transmission. "They consume everything. Technology, biology, energy. They learn from what they eat. They used our own computer systems against us. They turned our ships into weapons. We call them the Devourers, and they cannot be stopped." Panic spread through the council like fire. More colonies went dark. The Devourers moved faster now, spreading through space like a plague. Every species tried to fight them. Every species failed. The creatures adapted to every weapon, every strategy, every defense. The council species had evolved on peaceful worlds. Their planets were calm, with gentle weather and no large predators. They had developed technology through cooperation and trade. Their wars had been about resources and territory, fought with rules and honor. They had no experience with extinction-level threats. They had no concept of total war. Zelkon stood before the council, and for the first time in his long life he felt true fear. "We must evacuate the outer territories. Pull everyone back to the core worlds. Build defenses there." "That means abandoning billions of people," someone protested. "Better some survive than none," Zelkon replied, but his voice was hollow. Kesith, still recovering from his trauma, worked with the council's scientists. He had studied the Devourers more than anyone else who was still alive. He discovered something terrifying. The creatures were using the galaxy's own communication networks to spread. They were learning from captured databases, growing smarter with each victory. "They know our technology better than we do now," Kesith reported. They know our tactics. They know our weaknesses. Everything we've built is now a weapon in their hands. An old scientist asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we fight an enemy that uses our strengths against us? No one had an answer. The council chambers fell silent except for the constant updates of colonies going dark. The map of the galaxy slowly turned red as the Devourers advanced. Projections showed they would reach the core worlds within 6 months. After that, extinction. Zelkan sat alone in his chambers watching the stars through the viewport. He thought about the humans he had rejected. He remembered Sarah Chen's words, "You fear what you don't understand." He had been so certain that keeping humans away was the right choice. Now his people were dying and he had no solutions. A junior aide entered his chamber. "High Arbiter, the communication team has a suggestion. They want to send a message on all frequencies. A call for help to anyone who might hear." "Who is left to help us?" Zelkan asked bitterly. "There is one species we haven't asked," the aide said quietly. "The humans." Zelkan closed his eyes. The irony was almost painful. They had called humans too dangerous to join civilized space. Now civilization was dying and only the dangerous ones might be able to save it. "Do it," he said finally. "Send the message. Tell them we were wrong. About everything." The message went out across every frequency and every language the galaxy knew. It was a simple message born of desperation. "To any who can hear this, we are the Galactic Council. We face an enemy we cannot defeat. Our colonies are falling. Our fleets are destroyed. We are dying. We were wrong to turn away those who offered friendship. If you can hear this, please help us. We have nowhere else to turn." In the Sol system, human monitoring stations picked up the message immediately. Within hours, it was playing in every government building on Earth. Sarah Chen stood in the United Earth Congress, listening to the same council that had rejected humanity now begging for help. The debate was fierce. Many argued that the council deserved its fate. Others said humanity should remain safe behind its borders. But Sarah remembered something Dr. Marcus Webb had once told her. Being strong means protecting those who are weak. Being civilized means helping even those who hurt you. She spoke to the Congress with tears in her eyes. "I don't ask you to help them because they deserve it. I ask you to help them because we can. Because if we don't, we're no better than they thought we were, and because if they fall, we're next." The vote was close. But humanity chose to answer the call. They chose to be better than their fear and anger. They chose to prove that Deathworlders could also be heroes. Admiral Coltrane began mobilizing the fleet, and for the first time since the Devourers arrived, there was hope in the galaxy. Small hope, desperate hope, but hope nonetheless. The monsters were coming to save the day. The emergency session of the United Earth Congress lasted 3 days. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered in the Great Hall in Geneva. Outside, crowds had formed, watching the proceedings on giant screens. The question before them was simple but heavy. Should humanity risk everything to save those who had rejected them? Sarah Chen stood at the speaker's podium, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. 6 months ago, the Galactic Council called us monsters. They called us too dangerous to be part of civilized space. They were afraid of what we might do. Now they're dying and they're asking us for help. Why should we care? Shouted a representative from the African Union. They locked us in our own system like prisoners. They treated us like animals, Sarah nodded. You're right, they did. And if we stay here and let them die, we prove they were right about us. We show that we are the monsters they feared. She paused, letting her words sink in. But if we help them, if we risk our lives for theirs, we prove something more important. We prove that being strong doesn't mean being cruel. We prove that humanity is worth saving. Admiral James Coltrane stepped forward. He was an old soldier with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had fought in Earth's water wars decades ago. He knew what war meant. I understand the desire for revenge, he said. But let me be clear about the strategic reality. If the Council falls, the Devourers will have consumed half the galaxy. They will have absorbed the technology and knowledge of 47 species. And then they will come for us. We can fight them now while they're still learning, or we can fight them later when they're unstoppable. The vote was taken. 63% voted yes. Humanity would answer the call. Not because the Council deserved it, but because it was the right thing to do. Because staying human meant keeping your humanity even when others had lost theirs. The mobilization began immediately. Earth's orbital shipyards, which had been building in secret during the quarantine, came alive with activity. Humanity's fleet was different from the sleek, beautiful ships of the Council. Human ships were built for function, not form. They were thick with armor plating. They had redundant systems in case of damage. They carried weapons designed not for precision strikes but for brutal close combat. Admiral Coltrane stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable and looked at his fleet. 180 ships, 30,000 Marines, fighter pilots trained in atmospheric dogfighting, weapons that other species had abandoned as too primitive, railguns, missiles with explosive warheads, and flamethrowers for boarding actions. It wasn't elegant, but it was effective. Dr. Marcus Webb's research team had been studying the Devourers through the Council's shared data. What he found was both terrible and hopeful. "They're a hive intelligence," he explained to Coltrane. "They think as one. They share information instantly, but that's also their weakness. They don't understand individual action. They don't understand sacrifice. Can we beat them?" Coltrane asked. Webb hesitated. "They're designed to fight species like the Council, species that rely on technology and coordination, but humans evolve differently. We evolved to be unpredictable, to adapt, to fight in ways that don't make logical sense. Yes, I think we can beat them, but the cost will be high." The Terran fleet jumped into hyperspace, heading toward the front lines. As they traveled, they received continuous updates from the Council. More colonies falling, more fleets destroyed. The Devourers were accelerating their advance. Time was running out. When the human ships emerged from hyperspace near Tarsus Gate, they found chaos. Refugee ships from a dozen species were fleeing in panic. Behind them, Devourer creatures pursued, consuming stragglers. The Council defense fleet was in pieces, trying desperately to cover the evacuation. The aliens saw the human ships and didn't know whether to feel hope or fear. Kesseth, the young Vryn officer who had survived the first Devourer attack, was on one of the refugee ships. He watched the human fleet move into formation with military precision. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Coltrane's voice came over the open channel, speaking in clear galactic standard. "This is Admiral James Coltrane of the Terran fleet. All refugee ships proceed to the jump point. We'll hold them here." "You can't hold them," Kesseth transmitted back. "They'll overwhelm you. We've seen it happen." "Son," Coltrane replied, "you've never seen humans fight before. Now get those people to safety. We've got work to do." The Battle of Tarsus Gate began. The Devourers swarmed forward, expecting another easy victory. But the human ships didn't fight like the Council fleets. They didn't maintain perfect formations. They didn't rely solely on energy weapons. They charged forward, firing railguns that punched through Devourer flesh with kinetic force. They launched missiles that exploded in bursts of fire and shrapnel. They were aggressive, almost reckless. When Devourer creatures tried to board human ships, they found something they hadn't encountered before: humans who fought back in close quarters. Marines in armored suits moved through the corridors with weapons that sprayed fire and bullets. They didn't try to reason with the Devourers. They didn't try to understand them. They just fought with the savage efficiency of predators defending their territory. Kesseth watched from his refugee ship, unable to look away. He saw a human destroyer ram a Devourer cluster ship, both vessels exploding in fire. He saw fighter pilots fly maneuvers that would crush a Vryn's body from the G-forces. He saw a damaged human frigate, engines dead and hull breached, still firing its weapons until the ammunition ran out. The refugee ships escaped, but 15 human ships were destroyed and 3,000 crew members died. The humans had won the battle, but the cost was terrible. When Kesseth reached the safety of Apex Prime, he found Sarah Chen waiting to meet with High Arbiter Zelkan. The two of them stood before the Council, and Zelkan looked at the human ambassador with new eyes. "Your people saved 17,000 lives today," he said quietly. "Thank you." Sarah's face was tired. "Don't thank me yet. We've only just begun fighting, and we're going to need your help to win this war." "Anything," Zelkan said. "Name it. We need your power generation technology, your medical systems, your sensors. We'll provide the warriors and the tactics. Together, maybe we have a chance." Kesseth stepped forward. "High Arbiter, I request permission to join the human fleet. I want to learn from them. I want to understand how they fight." Zelkan looked at the young officer for a long moment, then nodded. "Permission granted. Learn well, Kesseth. Learn how to survive." Dr. Webb's team continued studying the Devourers, and what they found was disturbing. The creatures were converging. forming a massive fleet hive in dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. If that hive completed formation, it would be unstoppable. They had perhaps 2 months before it was too late. A desperate plan formed. Operation Prometheus. The human fleet would strike directly at the hive before it could fully form. It would be a one-way mission for many, but it was the only chance. As preparations began, Admiral Coltrane recorded a message to be sent to Earth if he didn't return. To whoever sees this, know that we didn't fight because we were forced to. We fought because it was right. We fought because someone had to stand between the darkness and the light. And we fought because being human means never giving up, even when the odds are impossible. The fleet prepared to jump. The galaxy held its breath, and in the darkness between stars, the Devourers waited, unaware that the galaxy's most dangerous species was coming for them. The war had been raging for 6 weeks. In the Grand Council chamber of Apex Prime, High Arbiter Zelkon stood beside Ambassador Sarah Chen, both of them watching holographic displays that showed battles across a dozen star systems. Zelkon had aged in these weeks. His silver skin had dulled and his eyes carried a weariness that comes from watching your people die. But something else had changed too. Where he once felt horror watching human tactics, he now felt something like hope. The humans were winning. Not easily, and not without terrible cost, but they were actually pushing the Devourers back. On the displays, a human cruiser engaged a Devourer swarm near the Kelly's colonies. The human ship took damage that would have destroyed any Council vessel, but it kept fighting. Its crew rerouted power from non-essential systems. They sealed breach sections and kept firing. When their main weapons failed, they used backup weapons. When those failed, they rammed the enemy. The ship was barely recognizable by the end, but the colony was saved. How do they keep going? Zelkon asked quietly. Any other species would have surrendered by now. Sarah's face was grim. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We learned that survival isn't about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about refusing to quit. It's about getting back up one more time than you're knocked down. A junior officer burst into the chamber. Ambassador Chen? Report from the Arcturus front. Dr. Webb's team has been hit. The laboratory station was attacked during their research. Sarah's face went pale. Is Marcus alive? The officer hesitated. Dr. Webb stayed behind to transmit his final data. The station was destroyed, but he got the information out. His last words were, "Tell them I found it. Tell them how to win." Sarah closed her eyes, grief washing over her. Marcus had been more than a colleague. He had been her friend since the first days of humanity's space program. And now he was gone, sacrificed to give them a chance. The data Marcus sent was everything they needed. He had discovered that the Devourers were forming a central intelligence, a hive mind nexus that controlled all the individual creatures. If they could destroy that nexus, the entire Devourer force would collapse into chaos. But the nexus was protected by millions of Devourer organisms, deep in dark space where no fleet had ever ventured. Admiral Coltrane studied the data with his command staff. It's a suicide mission, one officer said. We'd have to fight through their entire force to reach the core. Then that's what we'll do, Coltrane replied. We didn't come this far to turn back now. Start preparing Operation Prometheus. We launch in 72 hours. Word spread through the fleet. 200 human ships would form the strike force. 50,000 Marines would board the hive structure itself. The Council would provide support ships with their superior shields and power systems. Together, they would attempt the impossible. Keseth had been training with the human Marines for weeks now. At first, he struggled. Human combat doctrine was aggressive to the point of madness. They trained in hostile environments that would kill most species. They practiced fighting in zero gravity, in extreme heat, in darkness. They learned to make decisions in milliseconds and to trust their instincts over calculations. One day during a training exercise, Keseth saved a human squad from a simulated ambush. He had used tactics he learned from studying Earth's pack predators, coordinating the team's movements like wolves hunting. The human sergeant clapped him on the shoulder afterward. You're learning, Vryn. You're thinking like one of us now. Keseth didn't know whether to feel proud or terrified. But he knew one thing. If they were going to survive this war, everyone needed to think like humans. The fleet gathered at the staging point. Human ships bristled with weapons. Council vessels glowed with power cores running at maximum capacity. Mixed crews worked together now, humans and aliens side by side. The fear that once divided them had been burned away by shared combat. Sarah addressed the fleet from Apex Prime. Her voice carried to every ship, every soldier, every pilot. I won't lie to you. Many of you won't come back from this mission. The odds are terrible. The enemy is vast, but Dr. Marcus Webb gave his life to give us this chance. And I know he believed we could do this, not because we're invincible, but because we refuse to give up, because we fight for something bigger than ourselves. In the Marine Bay of the Indomitable, soldiers checked their equipment one last time. A young Marine named Christina Ruiz painted a symbol on her armor, Earth's moon rising over her home city. Next to her, a veteran sergeant did the same. All around them, thousands of humans prepared for battle, each carrying their own reasons to fight. One Marine asked his sergeant, "You think we'll make it back?" The sergeant smiled grimly. "Doesn't matter. What matters is we make sure they don't." Coltrane stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the fleet arrayed before him. Behind him stood Kesseth, now wearing a human Marine uniform modified for his physiology. The young Vryn had volunteered to fight alongside humans in the final assault. "You don't have to do this," Coltrane said to him. "This isn't your battle." Kesseth straightened. "With respect, Admiral, you're wrong. You came to save my people when you didn't have to. Now I fight to save yours. That's what allies do." Coltrane smiled. "You're going to make one hell of a Marine, son." The fleet jumped into hyperspace. On Apex Prime, Sarah watched them go, her hand pressed against the viewport. Zelkan stood beside her. "Do you think they'll succeed?" He asked. "They're human," Sarah replied. "They'll succeed or die trying. Either way, they'll make the Devourers regret ever coming to this galaxy." 3 days later, the fleet emerged at the edge of dark space. Before them loomed the Devourer Hive, a nightmare structure the size of a small moon. It pulsed with dark energy, and from it millions of Devourer creatures emerged to defend their nexus. Coltrane's voice echoed across the fleet channel. "All ships, this is it. Today we show them what Deathworlders really are. Today we fight not just for survival, but for every species that ever looked at the stars and dreamed of peace. For Marcus Webb. For every soul we've lost. For everyone waiting back home, attack!" The fleet surged forward into hell itself. Human ships and council vessels fighting as one. Explosions lit up the darkness. Ships fell, but the survivors kept pushing forward. Marines launched toward the hive in boarding pods, ready to fight in the corridors of nightmare. Christina Ruiz was in the first wave. As her pod punched through the hive's outer shell, she checked her weapon one last time. Around her, her squad was silent, focused. They knew what they were about to face. They knew many wouldn't survive, but they also knew they were making history. The pod doors blew open and the Marines charged into darkness, weapons blazing. The battle for the galaxy's future had begun, and the humans were done being afraid. Now it was the monsters' turn to feel fear. Behind them, more pods kept coming, wave after wave of humanity's warriors, each one ready to sacrifice everything for a galaxy that had once called them monsters. They would show the Devourers what real monsters looked like when they fought for something they loved. The fleet hive was a living nightmare. It stretched across space like a biomechanical moon, pulsing with dark energy and crawling with millions of Devourer organisms. Admiral Coltrane stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching his fleet engage the enemy in the largest space battle in galactic history. Ships exploded on both sides, each loss another star going dark in the void. "All wings, concentrate fire on Sector 7, Coltrane ordered. "Marines, prepare for deployment. We're opening a hole and you're going through it." In the Marine bays, Christina Ruiz and her squad waited in their boarding pod. The hull shuddered as the ship took hits. The lights flickered. Someone muttered a prayer in Spanish. Another Marine joked nervously about what they'd do when they got home. They all knew it was a lie. Most of them wouldn't make it home. But the lie made them feel better. Kesseth stood with a mixed unit of humans and Vryn soldiers. He had trained for this moment, but nothing could truly prepare anyone for what they were about to face. A human sergeant named Mills clapped him on the shoulder. "Stay close to me, Silverskin. We'll get you through this." "I should be protecting you," Kesseth replied. "Your bodies are more fragile than mine." Mills grinned. "Yeah, but we're too stubborn to die easy. You'll see." The pods launched, hundreds of them, streaking toward the hive like meteors. Point defense fire from Devourer organisms destroyed many, but more kept coming. Christina's pod hit the hive surface and punched through the organic hull. The doors blew open and her squad charged into darkness. The interior of the hive was a maze of biological corridors, pulsing with veins of dark energy. Devourer creatures emerged from the walls, screeching and attacking. The Marines opened fire with flamethrowers and explosive rounds. The Council had abandoned such weapons as primitive, but in close quarters they were devastatingly effective. Christina's squad fought room by room, corridor by corridor. They used tactics that would seem insane to other species, rushing into danger instead of retreating, sacrificing position to save wounded comrades, fighting on even when injured. One Marine took a hit that punctured his suit. The cold of space should have killed him instantly, but his training kicked in. He sealed the breach with emergency foam and kept fighting for another 20 minutes before evacuation. Keseth's mixed unit encountered a massive devourer cluster blocking their path. The creature was the size of a building, with dozens of tentacles that could tear through armor. Mills looked at his squad and grinned. "You know what? I've had a bad day. Let's take it out on this thing." They attacked with coordinated fury. The Vryn soldiers provided covering fire while the humans closed distance with explosive charges. Keseth found himself moving without thinking, his training taking over. He coordinated the team like a pack hunting dangerous prey, just like the humans had taught him. The creature fell and the path was clear, but the cost was mounting. Casualties poured in. 30% of the boarding force was already dead or wounded. Ships continued to fall in the space battle outside. The Council vessels, despite their superior technology, couldn't match human resilience. When a Council ship took critical damage, it retreated. When a human ship took critical damage, it kept fighting until it physically couldn't anymore. Admiral Coltrane received the casualty reports with a heavy heart. But he couldn't stop now. They were so close. The Marine teams had fought their way to the hive's central chamber where the Nexus resided. They just needed a little more time. Outside, a human destroyer named Defiance took catastrophic damage. Its engines were gone. Its weapons were offline. The captain ordered evacuation, but as the crew abandoned ship, the Devourers closed in on a group of civilian refugee vessels that had followed the fleet. Unable to wait behind, the captain of the Defiance, Commander Liu, looked at those refugee ships and made a decision. She canceled the evacuation order. All hands returned to stations. "We're not done yet." "Captain, the ship is dead," her officer protested. "We can't fight." "We can still move," Liu replied. "And that's all we need." The Defiance, running on emergency power alone, turned toward the Devourer swarm threatening the refugees. The ship accelerated, using the last of its fuel to build speed. Liu opened a channel to the fleet. "This is Commander Liu of the Defiance. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her we didn't go quietly." The Defiance rammed into the Devourer swarm at full speed, its remaining ammunition and fuel detonating in a massive explosion that cleared the path for the refugees. 63 crew members died in an instant, but 8,000 refugees lived because of them. Deep in the hive, the Marine teams converged on the central chamber. It was vast, cathedral-like, with the Nexus pulsing in the center. The Nexus was beautiful in a terrible way, a swirling mass of energy and consciousness. Around it, thousands of Devourer creatures stood guard. Coltrane's voice came through on all channels. "All teams, this is it. We plant the device and get out. Sarah, if you can hear this back on Apex Prime, I want you to know it's been an honor." On Apex Prime, Sarah stood in the council chamber, tears streaming down her face as she listened to the battle reports. Zelkan stood beside her, his own eyes wet with emotion. Around them, the entire council watched in silence as humans and their allies fought and died to save a galaxy that had once rejected them. The final assault began. Marines charged the Nexus from all sides. Casualties were horrific, but they kept pushing forward. Christina Ruiz's squad was down to 4 people. She was wounded, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but she kept moving. Beside her, Mills fell as a Devourer creature struck him. She dragged him to cover and kept fighting. Keseth and his unit reached the Nexus first, but they were pinned down by overwhelming fire. He looked at the device they were supposed to plant, a fusion bomb powerful enough to destroy the entire hive. Someone had to get it to the center. Someone had to stay and make sure it detonated. Admiral Coltrane's voice came through the channel. "I'm coming down. I'll place the device." "Admiral, no," Keseth protested. "Let me do it. You can still get out." "Son, I'm a 70-year-old man who's been fighting wars since before you were born. I've had my time. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Now get your people out of here. That's an order. Coltrane's shuttle landed in the chamber. The Admiral stepped out in powered armor, carrying the fusion device. He walked calmly through the firefight, ignoring the chaos around him. Devourer creatures tried to stop him, but his escort cut them down. He reached the Nexus and activated the device. 10 minutes until detonation, he announced. All personnel evacuate now. Sarah, tell Earth's children that their old soldier did his duty. Tell them we gave the galaxy a future. The Marines retreated, fighting every step of the way. Christina made it to a pod with 3 other survivors. Kesseth's unit evacuated with heavy losses. All across the hive, the survivors fled toward their ships. The fleet began pulling back, covering the evacuation. Coltrane stood alone in the chamber, watching the countdown. The Nexus seemed to sense what was happening. It pulsed frantically, trying to understand. For the first time, the Devourers felt fear. They had never encountered something that would willingly sacrifice itself. That's the difference between us, Coltrane said to the dying Nexus. You're all about survival at any cost. We're about something bigger than ourselves. You never stood a chance. The device detonated. The explosion tore through the hive, destroying the Nexus and everything around it. Without their central intelligence, the Devourers throughout the galaxy fell into chaos. They stopped coordinating. They stopped adapting. They became just mindless creatures that could be defeated conventionally. The cost was staggering. 40% of the human fleet was destroyed. 60% of the Marines who entered the hive never came out. 38,000 humans died that day. But they saved the galaxy. On Apex Prime, the Council held an emergency session. Selkan stood before them, his voice strong despite his grief. The humans saved us all. They gave everything to protect people who had once rejected them. I propose we not only grant them membership in the Council, but give them a permanent seat among the Council of 5. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in history, a Deathworld species would help lead the galaxy. Sarah Chen accepted on behalf of humanity, but she had conditions. We will join the Council, but only if we establish a joint military academy. One where all species learn from each other. Where your wisdom guides our strength, and our strength protects your wisdom. Years later, a memorial was erected on Apex Prime. It listed the names of every human who died in the war. 38,000 names. At the base was inscribed, "Here stand those who taught the galaxy that civilization is not measured by comfort, but by sacrifice for others." Kesseth became the first non-human to graduate from the Terran Marine Corps. He went on to teach at the Joint Academy, training a new generation in the lessons humans had learned on their harsh world. Christina Ruiz survived her wounds and became a diplomat, working alongside Sarah to build bridges between species. She never forgot Commander Liu's sacrifice or the 63 crew members who gave everything for strangers. 20 years after the war, Sarah stood at a graduation ceremony for the Galactic Defense Force. Human and alien officers stood together, united in purpose. The fleet that now protected the galaxy was stronger because it combined the best of all species. As Sarah watched a human and a Vryn officer shake hands at the ceremony, she thought about Admiral Coltrane, Marcus Webb, and all the others who had fallen. They had given their lives to prove that humans were not monsters. They had shown the galaxy what humanity really meant: courage, sacrifice, and the strength to help even those who had hurt you. In the sky above, human and alien ships patrolled together, protecting a galaxy that had learned a hard lesson. The Deathworlders they had feared had become the heroes they needed. And the galaxy would never forget that when darkness came, the ones who looked like monsters had been the ones with the brightest light inside them.